Hi, everyone. My name is Ashlyn, and thank you all for joining us today. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm super pleased to be a part of today's Financing Your Education session as a part of Ryerson's virtual open house. There are many sessions taking place across the virtual open house, so we encourage you to visit our website and sign up for any and all of the sessions that are of interest to you. To start us off, I'd like to acknowledge the land. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Ryerson has shifted to an essential services model to help prevent the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have put together a series of virtual sessions in order to share information and connect with you. Ryerson is working diligently to provide students with fulsome experiences while maintaining the health and safety of its community. Before we get started, I want to just let you know about some Zoom housekeeping tips. First off, we encourage you to ask questions. We have many faculty members and staff members on hand in order to answer all of your questions. In order to do this, all you need to do is click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. When you do that, a dialog window will pop up and you are going to be able to type out your question there for us to receive. One of our staff members will be there to answer it. If you are having any audio or video issues, again, we're going to ask you to let us know by using that Q&A pod at the bottom of your Zoom window, and one of our staff members will be there to assist you. Also, you can rearrange your screen any which way you'd like. It's not going to affect the way we see it on our end or the way others see it on their end. So feel free to arrange your screen any way you'd like to make yourself the most comfortable. Also, this presentation will include closed captioning to ensure accessibility. So if you require closed captioning, please click on the closed captioning button on the bottom of your Zoom window. And finally, also note that this session will be recorded and will be available on our website at a later date. To start us off, I'd love to know who's joining us. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. Perhaps you're a prospective student looking to join us next fall. Maybe you're a prospective student who's looking to join us a little bit further into the future. Perhaps you're a university or college transfer student, a parent or guardian, or even a teacher or counselor. You can let us know through that poll. If you don't see that poll pop up, feel free to let us know through the Q&A. I see that 70% of you have already answered, which I love to see. All right, we reached 80%, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. It does seem the majority of you joining us are looking to join us next fall, which is super excited. We're super happy that you're doing research and you're coming to this session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Bianca, who is going to speak to us all about financing our education.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Ashlyn, for that great introduction. And welcome to Financing Your Education, Government Assistance, Scholarships, and Money Management. Next slide, please. So we've got a jam-packed agenda for you folks. So I've sort of laid out what we're going to be going over. I'll start with introductions, so I will formally allow you to meet myself as your presenter. And then I'll give a snapshot of the Student Financial Assistance and Student Award and Scholarships Office. Then the first section, we'll talk about all things awards, scholarships, and student financial assistance. So we'll be covering entrance scholarships, the award spring system that we use here at Ryerson, prestigious scholarships, external scholarship opportunities, the OSAP program, co-op, as well as Career Boost, our on-campus employment program. Then we'll wrap up with the section on money management, where we'll talk a little bit about budgeting and student savings tips. Next slide, please. So again, hello, my name is Bianca, and I'm Assistant Manager of Student Financial Assistance here at Ryerson University. I'm also a proud double alum of Ryerson. I graduated from the Sociology program in the Faculty of Arts, and just earlier this week, graduated from the Chang School with a certificate in organizational leadership. Outside of work, I also double as a mentor. I am a mentor through Ryerson's Tri-Mentoring program, which pairs upper year students with folks working in career fields that they might be interested in. And this year, I am also proud to be the chair of the Leadership Development and Career Mentorship Program for the Black Faculty and Staff Community Network here at Ryerson. Outside of work, I love retro video gaming, I love to travel, and I especially love to find a good sale. So on your screen, I have a photo of myself and a photo of one of my favorite places to travel to, which is Hawaii. Next slide, please. So a little bit about who we are. And when I say we, Student Awards and Scholarships and Student Financial Assistance, although they are two very separate departments, we work very closely together to ensure that students are able to maximize the funding available to them at Ryerson University. The Student Financial Assistance team is a small but mighty team, primarily responsible for administering the Ontario Student Assistance Program, commonly referred to as OSAP, to about 30,000 Ryerson students every year. But we also support a variety of other portfolios, such as out-of-province and U.S. student loan programs like FAFSA or Sallie Mae, the Career Boost program, Ryerson's on-campus employment program, the Emergency Bursary Assistance Program, and a newer initiative, financial literacy, budgeting, and money management tips for students. Our sister department, Student Awards and Scholarships, is responsible for reviewing and processing all scholarship and bursary applications administered by Ryerson. So this includes the guaranteed and renewable entrance scholarships and all program, faculty, and university-wide awards. Next slide, please. So at this stage, some of you might be a little anxious because you're about to do your next chapter of coming into post-secondary and being financially responsible for your own actions. And I know when I was a student in grade 12, getting ready to start that next chapter, that was something that was really daunting to me. So my aim by the end of this presentation is to debunk some of the myths surrounding scholarships, awards, government assistance, offer you some really great information to make an informed decision, and hopefully make you a little less anxious about the financial decisions that you have to make to help fund your education. Next slide, please. So we're going to get started with the very first section, which is student awards and scholarships, or as I like to call it, free money. So if you'll hit to the next slide, please, Ashlyn, we're going to launch a quick poll because I'd like to see where folks are at when it comes to their understanding of scholarships and how interested you are in applying for them. Ashlyn will launch the poll shortly. So you should be able to see the poll on your screen, which is asking, are you considering applying for scholarships? Yes, no, or wait, we have to apply for scholarships? Interesting. Lots of folks are very, very keen on applying for scholarships. That's great. See a couple no's. See a couple of folks that are surprised that they have to apply for scholarships. All right, so 88% of you said yes, 6% of you said no, and 6% of you are surprised that you have to apply for scholarships. So good thing that we have a little bit of everything in this section, regardless of how you responded to that poll. So we'll jump into the next slide, please. So when we're talking about scholarships, awards, and bursaries, these words tend to be used interchangeably, but there are some key differences between them. Whether you use scholarships, awards, or bursaries, all are referring to forms of financial aid designed to help students pay for their post-secondary education. And typically, these do not need to be repaid. Now, where you get into those nuances is this. When you're saying the word scholarships or awards, typically referring to something that is a one-time disbursement or renewable every year, and it's awarded primarily based on academic criteria or merit. On the flip side, bursaries tend to be a one-time disbursement, awarded on the basis of financial need or exceptional circumstances that a student may be experiencing. Next slide, please. At Ryerson, we have really fantastic guaranteed and renewable entrance scholarships. And the way they work is this. Students attending a Canadian high school with final averages of 80% or higher in their top 6 grade 12 university or mixed level courses, or Canadian provincial equivalents, are guaranteed scholarships. Now, this is a really fantastic initiative that Ryerson offers. It's one that I'm very proud of to offer. And what I really like about this is that those top 6 grade 12 university or mixed level courses don't necessarily need to be the same courses that are required as prerequisites to get into your program. So when we're looking at those top 6 grade 12 U or M courses to determine your eligibility for these guaranteed and renewable entrance scholarships, we truly are looking at your top 6 highest marks even if they're not the ones that are required to get into your program of interest. So on the screen, there is a screenshot of the guaranteed and renewable scholarship thresholds. So there's different admission averages, different total values of scholarships, and the different amounts that you can get awarded in year one. So for example, if you have between an 80 to 85.9% at the end of your grade 12 year, your total value of your scholarship is $2,000, $500 awarded each year that you continue to maintain that CGPA. CGPA standing for cumulative grade point average. If you have between an 86 to 89.9, that's a total scholarship value of $4,000, $1,000 each year. If you have a final admission average of 90 to 94.9, that's a total scholarship value of $8,000, $2,000 awarded per year. And if you have a final admission average of 95% or higher, that is a total value of $16,000, $4,000 awarded in each year. Now, what I really love about these guaranteed and renewable entrance scholarships is that it's a very flexible sliding scale. So what does that mean? Well, let's say you come in at 86 to 89.9%. So you get that $4,000 scholarship, $1,000 awarded each year. Then you come to Ryerson, and then after the first year, it was a little tough to transition. And so you move down to 80 to 85.9 percentile. That doesn't mean you lose your scholarship. Your scholarship moves with you. So as your CGPA continues to increase or decrease, so too does your scholarship value. So as long as you're maintaining at least that 80%, you're guaranteed to have your scholarship renewed. You can find more information about the guaranteed and renewable entrance scholarships on the awards website, www.ryerson.ca/admissions/scholarships-awards. Next slide, please. We also have some really great prestigious entrance scholarships. And with prestigious entrance scholarships, these are ones that you need to apply to. The guaranteed and renewable entrance scholarships that I mentioned before, you don't apply to. You're automatically considered for them just by nature of applying to Ryerson. But these scholarships that we're about to talk about now, these are application-based, so you will need to apply to them if you are interested. Next slide, please. The first prestigious scholarship I'd like to highlight is called the President's Entrance Scholarship. This prestigious scholarship has a value of $10,000 annually, renewable for up to 4 years. There's 12 awards available, 2 awarded per faculty. And you're able to apply for this opportunity on AwardSpring, which is our scholarship management platform here at Ryerson, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a few more slides. The deadline to apply for the President's Entrance Scholarship is March 1st, 2021. And very important to note, students can apply for this scholarship before receiving an offer of admission. So please don't wait to hear from us on if you have an offer of admission to Ryerson or not. Start your application, and even better, start it early. These applications have a lot of additional criteria, things like perhaps resumes or written statements. And so to put yourself in the best position, I always encourage you to apply several months before the deadline so you can give yourself some time to fine-tune and to edit and to revise and put the best scholarship application that you can forward. Next slide, please. The next prestigious scholarship that I'd like to highlight is called the Terrence Greer Entrance Scholarship. This is one award of full tuition for your first year, and this award is non-renewable. You can apply for the Terrence Greer Entrance Scholarship through the AwardSpring platform as well. And the deadline is also March 1st, 2021. And just like the President's Entrance Scholarship, you are able to apply for the Terrence Greer Entrance Scholarship before receiving an offer of admission. Next slide, please. Another prestigious scholarship I'd like to highlight is the International Secondary School Merit Scholarship. This one's really specific to international students interested in studying at Ryerson. This has a value of $5,000, which is non-renewable, and there are 7 awards available. You can also find this scholarship opportunity on the AwardSpring platform, and the deadline to apply is March 1st, 2021. And again, students can apply for this scholarship before receiving an offer of admission. Next slide, please. Some other entrance scholarships that I'd like to highlight, and by no means is this exhaustive, this is just a couple that we'd like to share with you, Now you can find all faculty-wide entrance scholarships on the AwardSpring platform, but here are some that I'd like to share. From the Faculty of Engineering and Architectural Science, there's the George and Helen Berry Foundation Entrance Scholarship, which is 3 awards of $10,000. There's the Pierre Lassonde Entrance Awards in Engineering, which has 11 awards of $6,000. There's the Charles A. Root Scholarship, which is 1 award of $2,000. There's the Shad Entrance Award, which is 1 award at $2,000. And there's the Ontario Professional Engineers Foundation for Education Entrance Scholarships, which is an award value of up to $1,500. Again, you can find these opportunities on the AwardSpring platform. Next slide, please. Some faculty-wide entrance scholarships that I'd like to highlight from our Ted Rogers School of Management, which short form is TRSM. So the TRSM Undergraduate Entrance Awards has 4 awards of up to $10,000. The TRSM Renewable Undergraduate Awards has 4 awards of up to $10,000. The TRSM Undergraduate Entrance Scholarships have awards of up to $10,000. And the John and Nancy Love Entrance Award has 4 awards covering up to 90% of the overall cost of tuition. And you can find all of these plus more on AwardSpring. Next slide, please. Now, I've said AwardSpring probably 50 times, and I have a slide talking a little bit about what that platform is. At Ryerson, we use the AwardSpring platform, which is our scholarship management platform. So when I was a student, we had a website that had all 1,000+ awards, and you would scroll and click and scroll and click and scroll and click and just hope that you would finally click and open up an award for which you're actually eligible. Well, about 2 to 3 years ago, we moved to AwardSpring, which basically does that fantastic work for you. So whereas in the past, you had to scroll and click and scroll and click, now AwardSpring is a one-stop awards application where applicants and current students are able to log on to www.ryerson.awardspring.ca using their Ryerson ID and password to access all awards across the university. With a single application, you are considered for our 1,300+ awards, scholarships, and bursary opportunities available here at Ryerson. Now, important to note, some awards may require additional documentation, perhaps letters of support or an essay. These are all also submitted through that AwardSpring platform. You can find more information about AwardSpring or awards overall on the awards website, www.ryerson.ca/awards. If you haven't already activated your Ryerson identity through your Choose Ryerson portal and started browsing the AwardSpring platform, I strongly encourage you to do so. It's a really great platform. It's especially fantastic given that it does a lot of the legwork for you, but most importantly, it's really helping to maximize the funding opportunities available to help finance your education. Next slide, please. Some other scholarship resources that I'd like to share. So we do have our Ryerson website, ryerson.ca/student-financial-assistance, where you will be able to find some special category bursaries or other opportunities that are available to Ryerson students. But there's 3 websites that are great for external opportunities that I loved using as a student that I'm excited to share with you folks. The first one being Ontario University's Info, which is ontariouniversitiesinfo.ca/scholarships. I like this website because it does a really good job of consolidating all of the external scholarship opportunities available specifically to Ontario students. There's also Scholarships Canada, which is at scholarshipscanada.com. And much like the Ontario University's Info, Scholarships Canada does a good job of bringing together scholarships that are available across the country. And what I particularly love about Scholarships Canada is that they don't only showcase awards that are awarded based on academic merit. It also has awards that are based on creativity. Maybe you're a great designer. Maybe you love to write short stories or journal or poetry. There's so many different competencies that it taps into. And so it helps to reach a greater variety of students. And then finally, there are student awards by Wyconic. Their website is wyconic.com. Another great opportunity to find scholarships to help finance your education. Next slide, please. So that wraps up our first section on student awards and scholarships. We're going to pivot to student financial assistance opportunities. But before I dive in, I'd like to launch another quick poll because I want to know, are you considering government assistance, whether it's OSAP, out-of-province student loans, to help finance your university degree? Lots of submissions coming in hot. Up to 73% of folks have participated so far, with the vast majority saying yes at 80%, 6% saying no, and 14% saying maybe. Some great results. Thanks for sharing, everyone. So we'll jump into the next slide, where we're going to first talk about the OSAP program, Ontario Student Assistance Program. So this program is very specific to residents of Ontario. Next slide, please. So maybe you've heard of OSAP, maybe you haven't. OSAP is a government financial aid program that can help students pay for college or university. OSAP is an entirely needs-based assistance program, which means that funding eligibility is determined based on individual student needs. Now, I want to really talk about individual student needs because a common misconception about the OSAP program is that it's sort of like a paintbrush, where everyone gets the exact same amount of assistance, but that couldn't be further from the truth. It really is determined based on the individual needs of the applicant. And so no two students will have exactly the same OSAP assessment because there's different factors that play into that. OSAP is also not designed to cover all costs of attendance. We like to say that OSAP is a piece of a puzzle. Attending higher education is a shared responsibility between the government, through government aid programs, the student, their family, and by extension, the institution by offering student awards and scholarships. So consider OSAP as one way of multiple that you can finance your education. With the OSAP program, students must apply for OSAP for every semester or year for which they wish to be considered. Now, I want to debunk another myth there, because often I come across students who have the conception that you apply into the OSAP program once and you're sort of locked in, and they hold you into that program until you graduate. But that's not true. You can choose to engage with the OSAP program or to not engage with the OSAP program when you want. So for example, if you'd like to be considered for OSAP for first year university, by all means, submit an application. And then maybe in second year university, perhaps you worked a lot in the summer, or you are the successful recipient of a really great sized scholarship, and so you don't need OSAP for second year, then you simply just don't apply. You are able to apply for OSAP for every semester or year for which you'd like to be considered. And it's very important that you do so because those applications don't carry over. And a final myth that I'd like to debunk, which I think a lot of parents would like to hear, and I saw that there's a couple parents live with us today, thanks for joining, is that Registered Education Savings Plans, RESP, those funds do not need to be declared. And this is a bit of a change. In the past, RESP funding used to have to be declared as part of the OSAP program, but a really great shift in the right direction if you ask me. RESP funds no longer impact the amount of OSAP for which an applicant will be considered for. So the application just doesn't even ask if you have RESP funding, which is great because you're not being penalized for prioritizing and saving and setting aside funding for your child to attend higher education. You're able to access both your RESP and OSAP without one impacting the other. Next slide, please. So how is OSAP funding determined? Well, like I said, it's a very individual needs-based program. So it's looking at your personal financial situation. This is made up of a couple factors, such as parental income, the size of your family, your income and savings, any major scholarships that you might be the recipient of, and your living situation, if you're living at home versus if you're living away at home, whether it's in your own residence and shared residence or on-campus residence. Next slide, please. So further to how is aid determined, there's some other unique circumstances that go into that, such as educational costs. So looking at cost of your books, tuition, living expenses. There's the financial contribution piece, so how much the students are expected to contribute, parents and spouses, if applicable, as well as scholarships and bursaries that you might be the successful recipient of. And when you take those educational costs and subtract it by the financial contributions, that difference is the financial need as determined by OSAP. Next slide, please. So who's eligible for OSAP? Well, to be eligible for OSAP, a student must be a Canadian citizen, permanent resident of Ontario, or protected person. Of course, given that it is Ontario's government aid program, they need to be an Ontario resident. The student needs to be attending or entering an OSAP-approved program and school. And great for all of you folks, all of Ryerson's undergraduate programs are OSAP-approved programs, and we are an OSAP-approved school, so nothing to worry about there. And the student needs to be enrolled in or entering a certificate, degree, or diploma program that is a minimum of 12 weeks in length. So if you're interested in coming into an undergraduate degree program, like I mentioned, all of our degree programs are OSAP eligible. And by nature of coming into a full year program, you don't have to worry about the minimum 12 weeks in length because the full academic year is certainly more than 12 weeks in length. If you're perhaps listening and considering a certificate program through Ryerson, I encourage you to check out our Ryerson Student Financial Assistance website, which is ryerson.ca/student-financial-assistance, and look at the certificate programs that are eligible for OSAP, because not every certificate offered at Ryerson is OSAP eligible. Next slide, please. Further to who is eligible for OSAP. Students can still receive OSAP if they enroll in a public college or university program outside of Ontario. So maybe you're listening right now, but in a few weeks or a few months, you decide that you actually want to head to another Canadian province to do your post-secondary studies. Not to worry, you're still able to apply for the OSAP program to be considered for funding to finance your education. If students want to study outside of Canada or at a private institution outside of the province, they are eligible for partial OSAP funding through the federal government. Now, perhaps you're listening and maybe you're thinking about going abroad on exchange. Great to know that you can go on exchange and still receive OSAP funding. So that is a fantastic way to not only finance your education, but to be able to see the world. Next slide, please. Now, a common misconception that we often hear in student financial assistance is that taking OSAP means I have to pay a lot of money back. And that common misconception tends to come from Hollywood depictions of student loans, which is rooted in American student loans, which is very different from Canadian student loans programs. Next slide, please. In the Canadian context, there are different types of OSAP funding, and students are automatically considered for both loans and grants when they apply for OSAP. So students can choose to receive grant-only funding on their application, and it's important that you opt for grant-only funding at the time of application. That's something that you're interested in. Now, maybe you're wondering, what's the difference between a loan and what's the difference between a grant? Loans are repayable aid. So this is money that you pay back. Grants are non-repayable aid. So it's money that you don't have to repay, almost like free money. And like I said, when you apply for OSAP, you're automatically considered for both loans and grants as part of that assessment. So it's not like you have to do one application if you're interested in being considered for both loans and grants, and a different application if you're interested in just grants. Nope, just one application automatically considers you for both, and you have the opportunity as part of that application to choose to receive grant-only funding if you're eligible for grants. Important to note that if you are interested in receiving grant-only funding, you need to opt out of those loans every time you apply. This does not carry forward. So remember a couple slides back when I mentioned that you apply for OSAP for every semester or year for which you're interested in being considered. So too do you also need to apply for the grant-only funding if you are interested in receiving only grant-only funds through the OSAP program. Next slide, please. Now, a great way to make payments easier is through this. OSAP funding is automatically applied against students' tuition and mandatory fees at their post-secondary institutions. So what does that mean? What that means is that when your OSAP funding is dispersed, the OSAP funds will always first go to the school to be applied towards any outstanding tuition fees that are available on your student account. Any excess funding, if any, is then deposited into the bank account that you authorize when you apply to be part of the OSAP program. So this is great because it really takes the burden off of the student from having to make sure that their fees are paid and having to have the money transferred to their bank account and then transfer it to Ryerson. Much easier that at the time of disbursement, funding first goes to the institution, and if there's anything extra, then that automatically goes to the student's authorized bank account. Very important that you are always checking your OSAP portal, which we'll talk about in a couple slides, so that you're able to see exactly how much funding is going to the institution versus how much funding will go to your bank account, if any. Next slide, please. Now, you may also be eligible for more OSAP funding. If you are a student who identifies as one of the following categories, I strongly encourage you to identify this as part of your OSAP application because you may be eligible for more funding. So if you're a student who identifies as Indigenous, a current or former Crown Ward, student with a disability, whether temporary or permanent, or a student who is deaf or hard of hearing studying outside of Canada, I encourage you, if you are comfortable, to identify that on your application so you can be considered for additional funding through the OSAP program. Next slide, please. So after all that, maybe, just maybe, you're even more excited to apply for the OSAP program. So how do you do that? Well, for you folks who are interested in starting post-secondary in September 2021, so next year, the application is not yet available. The 2021-2022 application is expected to launch in spring of next year on the OSAP website. So when it does launch, what you'll do is you'll head to the OSAP website, which is ontario.ca/OSAP. And if it's your first time to the program, you will click register, that you are a new user. You will be provided with what's called an OSAP access number in OAN, not to be confused with your Ontario education number, your OEN. Those are two separate things. The OSAP access number is very specific to the OSAP portal, and it's important that you keep it in a safe place because it's how you will continue to access the portal moving forward. You'll complete an application, which is entirely done online, and it's actually a fairly quick application, broken down into 4 small parts, and the first part is starting with a financial literacy module. Then you'll gather all required supporting documentation. Now, this is very important because simply completing the online application does not mean that you have a complete OSAP application. Every student has a required documents page where they need to upload the supporting documentation necessary to complete their file. And those documents get reviewed by the institution's Student Financial Assistance Office or OSAP eligibility. So very important that you're not only completing that online application, but gathering all the required supporting documentation and uploading it to your portal. Uploading that documentation directly to your OSAP portal is the best and safest way to ensure that your documentation remains its integrity and also gets reviewed as quickly as possible. Then you'll complete your MSFAA online, MSFAA standing for Master Student Financial Assistance Agreement. And this is a really long, fancy acronym for the lifetime loan agreement that you are entering into with the government. So think of it like the contract that you're entering into by way of applying for the OSAP program. Then you will track the status of your application online. So the OSAP portal really does become your best friend. And like a best friend, I encourage you to check up on that portal at least once a week to see if there's any new communications from your school's Student Financial Assistance Office, from the ministry itself, and of course, to track the status of your application as your documents continue to move and your assessment continues to be generated. Again, the OSAP application for next year is expected to launch in spring of 2021 on the OSAP website. So hang tight and keep checking for that OSAP website often so you can apply early when the application launches. And at Ryerson, we always encourage students to try and apply for OSAP and gather all their required supporting documentation at least by the end of June of next year. That way you can be sure that your funding will be ready on time for when classes start in September. Next slide, please. Perhaps you're listening and you are a student interested in out-of-province funding. Students studying at Ryerson, but are residing in another Canadian province prior to their studies, are able to seek financial assistance from their home province's loan program. Now, most provinces have an online portal, but there are a few that are still paper-based. So if your province has an online portal, you are able to do everything online. But if you are at a province that still uses paper-based, you can complete your section of those paper-based forms and then submit the completed forms directly to us by email at funding@ryerson.ca. You can find more information on the out-of-province funding process for students at Ryerson on our Student Financial Assistance website. Next slide, please. Perhaps you are a student who's interested in studying at Ryerson, and you are a US citizen or US permanent resident, where you're able to apply through the US Direct Loan Program. So you can complete a FAFSA application online, FAFSA standing for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And there is an entire section on our website that has step-by-step instructions for US students that are going the FAFSA route. It's very important that if you are listening and you are a US student considering FAFSA, that you visit our website and follow those step-by-step instructions very carefully to ensure there's no delays in your funding. US loan inquiries can also be directed to us at funding@ryerson.ca. And important to note, FAFSA is not the only program that we accept here. If you are a US student, you are able to also opt through Sallie Mae, direct or indirect subsidized loans, or Parent Plus programs. And all that information is on our Student Financial Assistance website. Next slide, please. All right, so that was a jam-packed section on student financial assistance opportunities. Hopefully I was able to debunk and dispel some of the myths surrounding that for you. We're going to do a really quick pivot to a short section on earning while you learn and on-campus employment. Next slide, please. So at Ryerson, we are proud to offer a very robust on-campus jobs program through the Career Boost portfolio. Career Boost and Career Boost International are Ryerson's source for campus job opportunities. Career Boost is open to full-time undergraduate students who are Canadian citizens or permanent residents. Career Boost International is specific for international students. So we do have campus job opportunities, whether you are Canadian citizen or permanent resident or an international student. Note that first-year students can apply for campus jobs. And I'm always amazed when I hear that first-year students feel like they have nothing to offer to the campus. Of course you have something to offer. By way of being a student, you have something to offer, and we have something to offer you. Not only is it just an opportunity to gain meaningful employment, but working on campus is a really great way to start building that sense of belonging and connection to campus, especially in your first year when that's really critical. There's hundreds of on-campus jobs available each year. Some of them, and by no means is this an exhaustive list, include being a research assistant, working in social media and events, campus gym, software and technology design, or in the registrar and university operations. Fun fact, I actually started at Ryerson as a Career Boost student. I worked in the service hub, which is under the registrar's office, for 2 years. And then once I graduated, I became a full-time staff. And here I am 3 years later. Next slide, please. There's also cooperative education offered at Ryerson. And cooperative education, or co-op for short, are work terms that are paid. Co-op connects students with employers through paid, productive workplace learning opportunities. So like I said, it's a great way to earn while you learn. At Ryerson, we are very proud to offer co-op across a range of programs. All programs within the Faculty of Science, Faculty of Engineering and Architectural Science, new this year, the Faculty of Arts, and the Ted Rogers School of Management, so the business school, offer paid co-op terms. So again, co-op is a fantastic way to earn while you learn and gain some meaningful work opportunities in fields that you are interested in studying and pursuing. Next slide, please. All right, so we're in the home stretch. Last section, budgeting and other student savings tips. It's really important to talk about budgeting and other student savings tips and to note that budgeting is not something that begins once you get into post-secondary. I strongly encourage you to start building those meaningful habits now. Next slide, please. Now, a way that you can set yourself up for success with some money management tips are, like I said, budgeting for school can be daunting, so best to plan ahead. Applying for scholarships, many scholarships, as early as you can and as many as you can, is a great way to really stretch your opportunities to maximize your funding to finance your education. Also important to make sure that you are filing your taxes. It's very important, particularly for students who are interested in applying for OSAP, that you or your parents are filing your taxes, because OSAP does look at tax information from the previous taxation year to determine eligibility. Most importantly, next slide, please. It is very important to create a budget form and do your absolute best to stick to it. Now on the screen, we have a budget form from Higher Ed Points, so www.higheredpoints.com, and it's an Excel version. So what's really great about this budget form is that it kind of does all the work for you, which is really nice. So it has expenses and sources of funds. Expenses being the things that you have to pay for. So for example, tuition or residence, perhaps a meal plan, transportation, entertainment. There's several sections listed there. And then sources of funds. So maybe you have RESP funding, personal savings, maybe you have entrance awards and scholarships or government aid through out-of-province funding or through OSAP, for example. You're able to modify this spreadsheet as you see fit to match the lifestyle that you're living. And what's particularly great is that all of the formulas are already embedded into the spreadsheet for you. So it really does the work. You basically just input the values of tuition, residence, meal plan, what have you, whatever is pertinent to your situation. And then it calculates the total expenses you have, the total sources of funds, and that gap between the two, that's what you want to address. Because that is how, that is the funding that you want to try and start to figure out how you will tackle to finance your education. So I definitely encourage you folks to visit www.higheredpoints.com, download this fantastic budget form, and start early to get into the habit of mindful budgeting. Next slide, please. Some additional budgeting tips. It's important to create a budget at the start of every month. Budgeting is certainly not something I did as a student, I'll be completely honest, but I should have. And now I'm finishing up my certificate and continuing on through adulthood, I am budgeting all the time, constantly budgeting. I track every single expense, which is something that I encourage you folks to do. I'm old school, so I have my spreadsheet, which is actually the one from Higher Ed Points, and I like to track everything manually. But we are in 2020, and there are apps that do the work for you. And so if you are more app-based, there are fantastic apps that will do all that work for you and will help you be able to see the expenses that you have, the sources of funding, and give you some really good game plans on how you can continue to maximize funding available to you. Also important to set realistic budgets. And I always encourage students to start with the most important category first. So for example, if your main priority is ensuring that tuition is paid, then you're going to want to make sure that the funding available to you is first being allocated towards tuition and then work in descending order from there. Important to understand the difference between credit card versus debit and cash. In most simple terms, credit card is basically money that you are borrowing from the bank, whereas debit and cash is actually your money. So very important to note that if you are paying for something with credit card, I always encourage students as best as you can, when you buy something on a credit card, if you're able to, pay it off right away, or at least within the first 30 days. And most importantly, have goals. It's always nice to have something to work towards. It's nice to vision board if you're into that and work and see the little progression towards building up to that big goal that you have. So set goals, whether they're short or long-term, and do your best to work towards them. Next slide, please. Some other money management tips. Ask for discounts everywhere, anywhere, all the time. The Ryerson One Card, which is your student card, is great because many restaurants around campus accept the One Card for discounts. And the only thing better than a discount is when it's a discount on food. At least that's what I think. There's also the International Student Identification Card, ISIC for short, which if you are an avid traveler like me, The ISIP card is fantastic because it is recognized globally. And it's not just for international students. Any student is eligible for an ISIP card. It's really great if, like I said, you're an avid traveler because it gives you discounts on flights or accommodations, car rentals, different attractions. And there's also the SPC card, the student price card, which perhaps you're already accustomed to as high school students. But if you're not, I definitely encourage you to get one. It's about $11, including tax. It's an online card now, not a physical card. But before you opt into one, I encourage you to check with your bank first, because many banks, if you have a certain type of student account, they actually give you a free SPC card. So another great way to save money. On the topic of banks, your banking institution is your best friend. So chat with your bank about budgeting tools and financial advice to help manage your educational funds. Next slide, please. If you are planning on commuting, know that you're not alone. Ryerson is actually a commuter school. Over 75% of our students, faculty, and staff commute from within the Toronto area or within the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. If you are perhaps considering Go Transit, there is the Go Transit Student ID card, which provides eligible full-time students with discounted fare using the Presto card. And let me tell you, once I went from no longer being a full-time student to just being an adult and paying adult fare prices, that hurt. I never really realized how much money I was saving with that Go Transit Student ID card until I was no longer saving it. So if you are considering Go Transit, please make sure that you get that Go Transit Student ID card, which will become available to you in the summer, right before when your classes start for post-secondary. If you are a little more local to Toronto and will be enrolled in a full-time degree or diploma program, you can apply for the Post-Secondary Student Monthly Metro Pass through the Toronto Transit Commission, TTC for short. Next slide, please. And there you have it. That's actually the end of our presentation on financing your education, government assistance, scholarships, and awards. I'm really happy that you folks stuck around with us for 45 minutes, jam-packed session, definitely a lot of information. I'm going to pass it on to our host, Ashlyn. I know folks are rapidly answering Q&A, so keep those questions coming. We will remain online until 11 a.m. to continue answering your fantastic questions. But thanks for joining me. It was great to deliver this presentation. I hope you learned a thing or two, and most importantly, I hope to see you at Ryerson next year. Take care.
Hi again, everyone. Thank you so much to Bianca for such a great session. Like Bianca mentioned, we are going to shut down our audio and our video, meaning that you won't be able to see us or hear us, but we're still online until the end of the hour to answer any questions that you might have. So feel free to submit any last minute questions through the Q&A pod. And I encourage you to actually make note of the answers to the question, because once the webinar ends, you might lose that. So just make note of any pertinent or important information that you are getting from us. On behalf of Ryerson University, thank you once again for joining us, and we hope to see you in any future sessions that we host. Have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.